Good evening. I hereby call to order the June 15th, 2020 board meeting by teleconference of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Board of Trustees and certify that we are in compliance with the provisions of sections 551.041 of Texas Government Code pursuant to public notice of this meeting and is allowed by the Texas Attorney General's issuance of temporary suspensions to certain open meetings law due to the COVID-19 epidemic and closures. At this time, we'll have an official roll call. Dr. Tolbert?
Present.
Paige Ring?
Present.
Tim Daughtry?
Present.
William Bowes? William?
Present.
Liz Hatley? Liz Hatley is not joining us tonight. We're already aware of that. Donna Webb?
Present.
And I, Steve Newcomb, am present. Dr. Jim Chadwell?
Present.
Let the quorum show that a quorum of board members is present. Thanks, everybody, for joining our teleconference this evening. We have many district and campus administrators who are on this call, which is also open to the public to join. We're thankful for the technology that allows us to conduct this meeting by teleconference, and we appreciate the Texas Attorney General temporarily suspending laws that allow us to meet this way during the health crisis. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting, board members and others that are joining us. Dr. Chadwell will now officiate the opening pledges to the U.S. and Texas flags.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Dr. Chadwell. Next on the item tonight is the oral reports. Individuals desiring to address the board regarding an item on an agenda for an open meeting or to address the board on general matters or to submit a completed public comment request form by 4:45 p.m. today. The form is located on the EMS ISD website. Dr. Chadwell, at this time, are there any public comments?
No, sir.
All right, since there are no requests for public comment, therefore we'll move forward with our posted agenda. Our first item is in reports is agenda item 2B1. It's an operations report. I'd like to welcome Bob Templeton of Templeton Demographics. Thanks, Bob, for allowing us to and participate in our meeting tonight, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Newcomb, members of the board, Dr. Chadwell. Well, this is the highlights from our first quarter 2020 spring demographic report. And if you will refer to page 12 of the agenda, I'll just briefly touch on the economic conditions. No doubt these are the most extreme economic conditions that we have ever seen. It's hard to believe that in early March, we were looking at 50-year low unemployment rates. They were well below 4% in the DFW region. In fact, we had some of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. And then in less than a month's time periods, we went from the lowest to literally the highest unemployment rates that we've likely seen in the last 50 years. The unemployment claims, the initial unemployment claim numbers approached approximately 30 million Americans filing unemployment through April, and we are starting to see a little bit of an improvement in the unemployment numbers as we phase back in the return to work. If you'll next go to slide number 13 or page 13 of the agenda, we're very fortunate in Texas. We had an incredibly strong economy going into this pandemic, and fortunately for Texas, two cities, Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Dallas-Fort Worth region and the Austin region are considered two of the strongest markets in the country for their lower economic risk due to the COVID pandemic. Now, the Houston economy is expected to experience a little bit of a higher setback due to a portion of its economy that's tied to energy. But fortunately, we are also seeing that energy is bouncing back a little bit. The barrel of oil is back near $40 a barrel. But overall, Texas is doing rather well, all things considering. If you'll next go to slide number 14, one of the benefits that we have related to the housing market is that we have a very close pulse on the housing market. Not only do we survey the data every quarter, but we also have weekly conversations with builders across the country. And we did a survey of the builders a couple of weeks ago, and many of the builders are anticipating that their 2020 plan, the planned number of home starts for 2020, 69% of the builders are anticipating that they will achieve about 80% of their original plan for 2020. And about 18% of the builders expect to achieve about 100% of their plan. So the builders are pretty optimistic right now. And early sales data is indicating that May was one of the strongest months for new home sales contracts that we have seen. It's looking like the new housing market is experiencing more of a V-shaped recovery. Now, we're going to need a couple of more months to really determine how the housing market is responding, because we had some very unusual dynamics related to the housing market. When the COVID pandemic started in mid-March, that is normally the time of year when we see an increase in the number of listings of existing homes on the market. When the pandemic went into effect, we actually saw a reduction in the number of existing homes for sale, which further created a tightness in the supply of homes. So the new home sector is a benefit of that reduction in the number of existing homes for sale. So it's fueling that desirability of the new homes that were already on the ground. So that's what's helping the new home market kind of perform rather well during this COVID pandemic. Next, if you'll go to page number 15 of your report, this is the DFW New Home Ranking Report. And Eagle Mountain Saginaw is ranked 6th in the DFW region based on annual closings. Our annual start rate was up to 1,812. The annual closings, 1,776. VDL stands for vacant developed lots. We've got 1,814 vacant developed lots that are on the ground, ready for builders. That's a pretty tight supply. Now, there is a significant amount of development activity that is taking place to deliver new lots. Now, we've inserted a new column this quarter. It's the inventory column. Now, inventory is the number of new homes that are under construction, that are model homes or finished vacant spec homes. Now, we have 939 homes that are in inventory. And that is because January and February were incredibly good months for new home sales, which led to the increased number of starts. So we do believe that a majority of the inventory is likely going to close over the summer, which should lead to a very strong or a very good fall enrollment growth picture. As you know, new construction was considered an essential service over this pandemic, so we did not see a slowdown in construction activity. Now, we've got 16,724 future lots that are in the development pipeline. You'll notice that's about the 4th highest supply of future lots in the DFW region. And we do expect that Eagle Mountain Saginaw is going to continue to move up this ranking report over the next several quarters, because Frisco is going to be dropping down this list. Dallas ISD will likely be dropping down this list. So we do expect Eagle Mountain Saginaw to move into the top 5 over the next couple of quarters. Next, if you'll go to page number 16, now this is looking at the single family data based on your current elementary zones. As I just mentioned, we've got about 1,800 annual home starts. What's significant about this data is that you have 5 elementary zones that are building more than 200 homes per year. you have 7 zones that are building more than 100 homes per year. So the single family growth is taking place all across the school district. Your number one most active elementary zone for new home construction is Lake Point Elementary. And then we've got Copper Creek second with 262 annual starts, and then Comanche Springs with 228. So very healthy activity in the new home market. Next, if you'll go to 17, this is looking at a adjusted forecast. So we did feel it was important to offer a slightly reduced forecast based on that builder survey that was reporting about a 80% achievement of their 2020 plan. So what we did was we backed off single family closings for the year 2020 by 20%, which did result in this forecast for 2020 of 21,580. And we have really been stretching our brains to unravel this COVID-19 impact and how it's going to affect the enrollment in the fall. I go back and forth because during the pandemic, we have seen an incredible response from the school districts related to the providing of the virtual enrollment, providing meal support, technology support, student support, and I believe school districts have received very positive press. Also, during a recession, we do tend to see some return of private school enrollment to the public schools, so we could see a little bit of a return there. I also think we could see a return from charter school because of the school district's such incredible response during these challenging past couple of months. So the fall is going to be a very dynamic period related to how districts promote or how they deal with virtual enrollment in the fall, what's the comfort level that parents are going to have. And so, but this would, in my opinion, would be more of a worst case scenario for your enrollment. So worst case would be about 655 additional students, but I think it is a likely scenario where you could see about 767, which was our original forecast. And that's because I do think the housing market is performing very well. Now on page 18 is just a look at the 1 year COVID projection. And you'll notice that the overall elementary numbers are down about 60 kids from what we forecasted this past October. But you still will have elementary campuses that are virtually full and slightly over capacity, such as Lake Point. We do anticipate that Lake Point will be about 846 kids next year. Your next largest elementary school would be the Greenfield Elementary at about 744. Now that elementary is stabilizing at those mid 700 numbers. On the next page is looking at the secondary enrollments for your middle schools. The largest middle school is Marine Creek Middle School. It's likely going to be about 1,126 students in the fall. At the high school level, Chisholm Trail High School would be at about 2335. And then Boswell High School would be at about 2253, and Saginaw High School would be at 2037. Next slide on page 20 of your agenda. In summary, initially we were thinking that the overall economic recovery could take a V shape. Now we're kind of leaning towards a swoosh recovery, the Nike swoosh, which is requiring about a 16 to 20 month time period to get back to some of those areas, what we were seeing in 2019. I would say that it looks like the single family market is taking more of a V-shaped recovery. Now, we did have a record-breaking number of new home starts in the first quarter. It was literally the highest number that we've seen in the last 10 years. The existing home inventory did decrease by 10% due to owners pulling them off of the market during March and April. We're starting to see a little bit of an increase there, but I do think this shortage of supply of the existing home market is helping the new home market. The district's COVID-19 forecast does call for the enrollment to be at about 20,925. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Bob, this is Steve Newcomb. What would be the biggest factor that would affect these numbers that you just went over with us?
Well, part of me is thinking that, we have some sections of the economy that are going to take a little longer to recover from. The airline industry, which is a significant portion of the Dallas-Fort Worth economy due to the headquarters of American Airlines and Southwest Airlines. So how quickly we can surge back in some of those areas. And if it stays extremely down, we could see continued layoffs for American Airlines and Southwest. Some of the other factors related to the economy are starting to, we're starting to see some spending. The job growth reports lately have been pretty good, a little better than what was anticipated. The next thing that I start to worry about is a surge or a COVID return in the fall, which then could further dampen the fear, or kind of create that continued fear of wanting to get back to full business as usual. If we can gradually get business opening back up, then we will see those unemployment rates continue to drop, which then I think will help with some confidence of the consumers.
So that would kind of be a key number for us to watch then also, would be the unemployment.
Yes. The other thing that's going to be really interesting is this is so unlike any of the previous economic recessions that we've seen. The finance institutions have been offering forbearance on mortgages, so mortgage payments. So we are not seeing a surge in foreclosures because the lending institutions are pushing those mortgage payments. We're seeing a very similar trend with the multifamily industry and the forbearance of rents. Now, fortunately, on the apartment side, only about 8 to 10% of the rents have gone to forbearance. So about 90% of the renters are making their rent payments. Also, on the mortgage side, it's about 8% of the loans across the country have been in forbearance or offered forbearance. Now, as long as that gets kind of worked out within the next 2 to 3 months and we don't continue to see the forbearance, then we could stave off a financial crisis, because that's the bigger concern, in my opinion, is that this doesn't turn into a financial crisis that then causes foreclosures to increase, which then has such a negative impact on property values. So it's kind of, if it turns into a financial crisis, it can create a spiraling impact on property values.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Bob, we appreciate you again bringing the report in this manner, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Well, you're welcome. And the second quarter, which will be coming out mid to late July, that's going to be a big quarter, because all three of the second quarter months, April, May, June, all three of those months are within the COVID pandemic time period. So that'll give us a really good indication on how the single family housing market is responding. And we're going to be pushing those out as fast as we can in July, so that we can give you as much information ahead of the start of school.
Okay, good. I think our board meeting is late in July. It's the 27th, so we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, that's could be perfectly timed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Next is agenda item 2B2. It's operations report. Mr. Cleet Welch.
Yes, we have a construction update. We have some photos and updates we'd like to go over our projects. First of all, we'd like to look on page 23. We have a Copper Creek Elementary School, and we have a beautiful picture of the front entrance with the name is over the library, so it is showing up. You notice that you see the workers putting in the sidewalks, the plat work, so that's been poured in. And overall, they're cleaning up the front of the site. You can see that also in the bottom picture. And from this view, you can also see that the gym masonry has been completed. On slide 24, this is inside the tornado shelter gym. And what they're doing is they're two different things, but they're putting in the hat channel, which that is a support for the sound panels. So each one of those, this will have the most sound panels that we've got in any of our structures, but it's just echoes very loudly in there. So we felt like that was something that we would need in there to help offset that sound. And then you can see the tornado louvers with the gentleman on the left, and those work during a pressure, and if something in there comes and pressurizes, it needs to equalize those vents open up. Going to slide 25, you see the gentleman working on the floor. He worked on there for about 4 days, making sure that that was nice and level and smoothed out. And so they're working on the VCT. One of the things that's you see that just not a lot of natural light, but also a lot of light in this open area. So it will not be dim at all when you come to that. It'll be a good bright experience with that LED lighting in the main lobby. 26, on slide 26, you see just a typical classroom on the lower level. Those doors are locked. They're waiting for the furniture to arrive, and I believe we're slated for Tuesday the 23rd of this month to start that delivery. And then we'll keep the bottom left. You see the covering on the floor. That'll help protect it until we're ready to take it off and wax the floors. 27 shows the finished playground area. 28 is looking at Ballsville High School and the Buford Thompson project. There's kind of some utilities are being worked on. This is the main entrance. It's going to be expanded, which is where the picture was taken. And if you notice, the old white baseball fence has been removed. So it's starting to really look like a construction zone in the back end. On slide 29, you had the Ag Science building. And so the glazing was put in today. That's the yellow right in that area. And behind and lower that, you do not see that anymore. And you can see that they put the fireproofing and the waterproofing on the outside of the building. On page 30, you have the framing and the ductwork in progress in the, that is the tech area, the little lab area. On slide 31, we move over to the turf room and how that's being renovated. So that is the plumbing for the showers, the temporary showers that will be installed in there. And on the bottom slide, the walls have been put in place. Today was kind of a big day for the demolition. So that occurred at the Ag building and the field house. As of an hour ago, they had started tearing down the old field house. So it is definitely under progress. On slide 32, it shows where the weight room will be located. Obviously, they're not in their finished location, but it's in the storage area right now. This will also be an equipment storage and the new little training room, temporary training room. And the bottom left is just one of the trees that was planted in the mid-90s, and you can see that it's trying to be salvaged. And so we're trying to work around that one as best we can. Slide 33, well, I talked about the demolition. You also see on the top slide the little green generator that's on a trailer. So that's used during the day to make sure we keep our moisture correct in the gyms. You see in the middle slide, the electrical room, the new electrical, and obviously you see the demolition machine that's underway. Slide 34, looking at the parking lot, all the asphalt is being removed. You see the stormwater, that is a very deep trench and how it's being pushed off the property into the creek. It's a very large project. The next slide on 35 is really kind of give you a preview of package 4, which is going to come to y'all tonight. And we have some before and after photos, and because this is the major part of the project, and money-wise and construction-wise. So just kind of a reminder of kind of before and after. So you can see the date. This was last week. That's what it looked like. And then if you look in the future, you go to slide 36, you'll see the finished parking lot. You see on the far left, you would see the expanded entry. And obviously you see the large entryway, the new press box the ticket booths, the new grandstands. So, and then you can see the weight room. So it's definitely a different format than currently what we have. On 37 is a close-up of the stadium, Pioneer Stadium. Just want to bring out that those are not really purple trees, but they are, I guess the 3D doesn't do them quite justice, but we do have those Texas laurels on our campus. Just don't quite remember them that bright yellow. I mean, not yellow, purple. Slide 38 is looking over there from the auxiliary field and the old turf room. And that was before the demolition. Then when you go to page 39, that is what it'll look like when it's completed. You have the new turf room, the new visitor entrance, the new concession stand right by the turf room. You see the landscaping and the new turnaround area for it could be either buses or it'll be coaches parking. And then that's just a good picture showing you the new press box from the front side, from the field view, and the new fixed seating, and how all that ties together when you have the blue tile that is on the weight room, dressing room, and then the seating. So really comes together in that photo. And on page 40, slide 40, that's just a, where the two bicyclists are located, that's where the Coach Abs, the athletic director, would be located currently. And that's the training room, just kind of a more close-up view. And you also see the new, the Jay Williams track, and then you have the Paul Jacobs Field, how we will memorialize them in that area. So again, this project is coming to y'all tonight for consideration, and really it's the largest part of the whole project. Moving on to the turf projects, they're all underway. And they're all at different stages. So you have Highland, Creekview, and then on page 42 you go into Prairie Vista and Ed Wilkie. And then on page 43 you have the two high school auxiliary fields. And again, they're all at different stages, but they're still programmed to be on schedule before right around the middle of August. And slide 44 is just our new property at Lake Country Elementary. It's been mowed, and so we've met with the district, the architect, and the builder, the general contractor have met. We've tried to make sure that we don't miss any time, and that we know we're on a tight schedule. So construction should begin on this fairly quickly within the next several weeks. And on page 45 are just some other items and kind of where they're progressing. The security upgrade in multiple campuses in the gym night maintenance facility, that's up for consideration tonight as an action item. And then we have the network operations center. It is already under construction. The tennis court resurfacing begins this week, and the wind slats also start being put in the fences. And we continue to look at the central office. We did a site visit, looked at where the building corners would be and kind of how it would set on the property. So we did that also a week ago. So I know there's a lot of slides, a lot of pictures, but if there's any questions, I'd like to answer them at this time.
All right, Clete, we appreciate that report. Do you still feel like that the Lake Country Elementary is it even possible that we're going to have it finished by our projected date?
Well, we're sure pushing for it. I mean, the weather's going to dictate a lot, and things that are going on, and as far as the COVID, those two things could impact us. But the team has already looked at the project. They're putting the timeline together, and as far as who the superintendent on that job will be, if it's possible, we will definitely meet that goal.
And how about the city? Is it going? I know you said it's progressing through city planning. Is that?
Yes. It's going. It takes a certain time period just by the calendar, and so we've not found anything at this point that would delay our start at the end of this month. So we're looking to hopefully get an early grading permit and get our swift water, get our silt fence up, and just kind of jump through those hoops and get it prepped. So everything seems to be going as best it can at this point through the city.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Welch? Hearing none, thank you, Clete. Appreciate it. Next is agenda item 2C1, the financial report and a budget analysis. Mr. Shealy.
Good evening. Starting on page 47 is the financial report, and I'm going to go over a few of the items. We haven't done this since after or before HB3, so some of these have changed, some of them are pretty much the same. Average daily attendance is the number of kids that are in attendance every day. It's just a count of kids that actually attend. Certain classes of kids, especially some of your special ed classifications, do not have as good attendance as some of your mainstream children, but it all goes into calculation of the weighted average daily attendance, which is the next item, which is your WADA. WADA is the number that we're funded on. So when you have a basic allotment, even though you may have a average daily attendance, your funding is actually off of that WADA number. Normally, that number is about 125% of your attendance number, but we're experiencing that number increasing primarily because of the increase in our special education population. The fast growth allotment is a new item coming out of HB3, and it is a recognition of additional pressures on fast growth districts. Last year, we were not fast growth. We were down just below the cutoff. This year, we are one of the highest large school fast growth districts in the state. The difference is whether you include its 3-year rolling average, whether you include the ILT opening, which actually we lost kids that year. That was the reason we didn't make the list, even though we had schools opening at Marine Creek Middle School and Copper Creek during that time. Compensatory funding, we've always had this. It's always been based on the free and reduced lunch. Now it's based on average income levels in certain census blocks. It's a very complicated calculation. The TEA has changed their time frame for that calculation several times. At this point in time, we think we're pretty much on track with what we originally projected, so we should be in good shape. I want to jump to instructional facilities allotment. This number has been increased from $200 per student to $1,000 per student. So we had 1,000 children at Marine Creek Elementary. That gave us $1 million extra that we could use to open that school, or actually use any way we wanted to. That $1 million is gone this year. So we have to be very careful when we get that money that we use it for the one-time expenditures related to opening those schools. I believe Copper Creek is scheduled, according to Bob, with 350 or less kids. So their new instructional facilities allotment will be about $350,000. And once again, that goes away the year after. The compressed tax rate is a rate that is derived by TEA based on our growth compared to the average growth in the state. We originally assumed our growth was going to be in the 10 or 11% range. And based on that, our tax rate, compressed rate, would have fallen to a maximum of around $1.99 to $1, possibly lower. Given the tax rate or the tax increase we have seen in April, and we just got the May report today, we're looking closer to 6.5%. So we're anticipating our compressed tax rate will be about $1.03.5, down from $1.06.8. So our taxpayers will get about a 3-cent reduction in their overall tax bill or tax rate to calculate their tax bill. The state finance system, as I said, is based on weighted average daily attendance. And the money from that system is really based just on kids. It doesn't have anything to do with your increased property taxes. If your property taxes go up, state aid goes down. There's no lag money. It is purely based on the number of kids. So when Bob comes in and he says we're going to be 70 kids less, that 70 kids is well over $500,000. We have to be very careful in how we budget because we used to have a default, which was lag money. That money's not there. So the number of kids is really critical. Even if 100 kids can cause that kind of change, we need to be as accurate as we possibly can. And fortunately, Bob's been pretty accurate. One of the things I did want to point out, COVID-19 has had an impact on the development of the budget. The number of protests in Tarrant County is in excess of 200,000. In the last 2 years, they have had almost a 300% increase in tax appeals. Those appeals are slowing tab down. We do not know when we're going to get the certified values. And if we do get them, I'm not sure they're going to be certified at the level required by the law. We have to adopt the budget by the end of August, but we do not have to adopt the tax rate until the end of September. Having said that, I don't like adopting the budget when we don't know what the tax rate is going to be. But under the new system, that tax rate really just sets how much money the state is going to give us because it doesn't impact our revenue. So I'm not uncomfortable coming forward with the budget in August and setting the tax rate in September. We've never done it before, but I'm not uncomfortable doing it. Attached to that item, beginning on page 50, is a 5-year analysis, and this is based on HB3, which we are looking at in terms of the growth of students. And you'll notice up there it says 790 for the current year. That's one of the reasons that this number varies from the actual results. The revenue is pretty straightforward. We're going about $6 to $7 million a year for the next 5 years. It is a matter of trying to decide what our expenses are going to look like. And if you go to page 51, you'll notice that we have the expenses, and those expenses show a continued surplus from basic operations, and it goes up from 996, and this is after the $1.5 million that we're trying to budget to grow fund balance. So you'll notice that there's a good increase above that, but if you go to page 52, I've tried to calculate the impact of opening the new schools, in particular Copper Creek, Elementary 17, 18, and also high school number 4. And when we do that, you'll notice that the surplus drops pretty substantially going into future years to a point where we're actually looking at a deficit budget by the 5th year out, which is when the high school opens. High school openings are not cheap, 2024, 2025. 5 years is a long ways out. I don't know that HB3 will still be the law of the land, but I would say, depending on what this next legislature does, we need to look very closely at revising that number, look at building fund balance, the possibility of using fund balance to smooth those numbers, but we need to get through the next legislative session. Beginning on page 53 is actually the current projection that I have for the 2020-2021 budget. It is showing total revenue of $205 million and total expenses of $204,793,000 with a surplus of $671,730. Those numbers are preliminary. They do include a 2% raise, and we're going to talk about raises later on, but these numbers do include a 2% raise, and they are conservative, but at the same time, they're not that far off of what I anticipated they would be. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Jim, when you talk, this is Steve Newcomb, when you talk about setting the tax rate different after we approve the budget, from what you just told us, the tax rate, the compressed tax rate is already set?
Well, the compressed tax, yeah, it will be set based on information we provide TEA in July. They're going to do a canvass of the entire state. They're going to take that money, they're going to figure out what the average increase is, and then they're going to compare it to the individual school districts, and then they're going to give us our compressed tax rate. I haven't quite figured out what goes into that pot, how they're going to figure it all out, but I don't know how long it's going to take for them to get the information. My concern is that if we get it and we don't agree with it, we won't be able to appeal it and still make the publication timeline notices for a public hearing on the tax rate. So really the driver on that is the number of days it takes us to advertise for a public hearing.
But so all we'd really be setting then is the debt service tax rate, that portion of it? Because if this is set for us, then what will we be deciding?
Well, you do get to vote and have to vote on it. It is a compressed rate. Theoretically, you could go below that rate. If you did, however, you would lose state aid as well because they would consider it a income. They consider your local contribution to be at the compressed rate. So you're right. You don't have a whole lot of options, but you are required to vote on it regardless.
Okay. And then the difference, you mentioned it, but your budget that you showed us for 5 years had $1.5 million projected fund balance replacement, and then plus another million of surplus. So that's 2.5 million. But then the actual one you're going to present is going to be a 671 surplus.
I think it's going to go up from there, but at this point in time, we're getting ready to refine some numbers. You'll notice the income's down quite a bit from the 5-year model, and we're looking at that very closely. There's 4 different models that we use to project revenue, and those 4 models, we would like it if they're close. I usually err on the conservative side, and that number is conservative. I don't think it's going to go up a ton, but I think when we come back in July, you're going to see an increase in that bottom line.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, I will move to report 2C2. Mr. Shealy.
2C2 is a discussion of salary scenarios and recommendations. We've been working with Human Resources. They do a salary study of the area to determine what the labor market looks like. We also have several conversations and surveys. Dr. Chadwell talks to other superintendents. I talk to other CFOs to get an idea of what's happening at other school districts and what that does to our standing within the labor market. There are several options that we have that we can look at in terms of going forward. And what I'd like to do is go over Some of the inputs that we're looking at, some of the options that we have, and then some of the results that we need to consider. The first element is a 1% raise costs the district right at $1.5 million. The 1.5 million will increase as the district grows and we add employees. But from this time, it's right at 1.5 million. It's a number we've used for the last couple of years, once again, to be conservative, but that number, it's hitting that number now. We also tried to be sensitive to the impact of the pandemic to a lot of our families. We have a lot of families who have lost a portion, if not all, of their household income. And while there have been some federal programs, specifically in the CARES Act, and also some forbearance by banks and landlords, there's still a lot of folks out there that are struggling. And we kept that in mind as we went through this process. Our funding is dependent on state and federal sources. As I said, if we reduce our M&O tax rate below the computed compressed tax rate, not only will we lose that revenue from property taxes, but the state will reduce our revenue that they won't increase it to cover the distance. They're actually going to reduce theirs because they have a lack of what they consider local effort. And we've run into this before, even under the old system. It's one of the reasons when we did the TRE back, I think, in 2012, just the fact that we raised our tax rate and lowered our INS rate so that we had a net wash between the two, we got almost $700,000 from the state of Texas because we had a higher local effort. So once again, we're in the same boat. We have attended multiple online discussions with administrative and legislative leaders in the state. In those discussions, we have been repeatedly advised to budget conservatively and to not take on additional ongoing expenditures. That not take on additional ongoing expenditures, almost exactly that wording has been used by multiple people. It's almost as if that they sat around and decided that's how they were going to present it. There is a commitment to the funding of education, but then again, none of us have been through anything like this pandemic, and the period and nature of the recovery is questionable. One other note, which I'd like to point out in a discussion online, Q&A with Representative Huberty, who is the chairman of the House Public Ed Committee, he noted that the biggest source of revenue in the state of Texas are fund balances that are held by school districts. That amount is estimated to be $25 billion in unreserved and undesignated fund balances. There have been in the past discussions about school districts using those fund balances to finance operations as opposed to holding on to that money. The question would arise as to how much fund balance is considered necessary. Some of the discussions have indicated that a larger school district, such as ourselves or bigger, would not need to have more than 15% in fund balance, which would be approximately $30 million, as opposed to the 90 days of operations, which is recommended by TEA, that is close to 49 million. So whether or not the legislature would require such a reduction is unlikely. However, after the representative's comment, I believe it is possible, if not probable, that if the state is in a financial bind, the state will consider the use of local district fund balances as a source of revenue rather than reduce the economic stimulus fund. The use of fund balance is in essence running a deficit. So in spite of, I mean, they've assured us that they're going to fully fund education, but they also use the stimulus money from the CARES Act, which for us would have been $1.4 million, to make sure that we were fully funded. We're not going to see an additional 1.4 million. They're going to use it as part of the normal finance plan just to make sure we're fully funded. In that same way, they simply have to consider local effort to include property taxes and a certain percentage of fund balance. And the state would then kick in the remainder, and school districts under their definition would be fully funded. So while they do have a commitment to education, that commitment can be, the definition of that commitment can be modified. Having looked at all this, we threw together or put together three options. Option one is a permanent increase in compensation. It's just a GPI across the board. We calculated 1%, 1.5%, and 2%. The report that I showed you does have a 2% increase built in. If we go with a GPI for 2%, we cannot reduce that in future years. If there were to be a reduction in funding, the district would have to look for other areas to cut. They would not be able to do anything once that rate is approved. Consequently, an increase in compensation, a permanent increase in compensation, reduces the district's ability to respond to the conditions of the pandemic should they come up. The second option is to provide a one-year supplemental salary allotment. Several districts have referred to this as a bonus. I don't think it's a bonus, but for ease of comprehension, let's call it a bonus. If the state funds the financing plan, then this supplement could be, or bonus could be made permanent. So if there were to be a bonus of 2% this year, and next year we were to be fully funded, then yes, we could continue the 2% plus whatever else might be available. If the state does not fully fund the school finance plan, we would not be obligated to continue that compensation increase. And at that point in time, the board would have the ability to direct funds to areas that serve the best interests of the student, the community, and employees. The third option would be a hybrid of the first and the second. And I was looking at something like a 1% permanent GPI, which is general percentage increase, combined with a one-time bonus of 1% to be paid in two payments, separate and apart from the normal monthly gross pay. I don't want this added on as a gross, because then it will look like a reduction if it's not continued. So we could have two payments, separate payments, one in December and one in May, which would be just before Christmas and just before the end of school. The amount of the raise and how it's structured is up to the board. It is I mean, we've laid out the three options. How much it is, really, a lot of it may depend on HR's decision or HR's presentation as to what the labor market's looking like. And that may be, we can throw that around after Debbie's done. A couple things on the economy, and Bob kind of alluded to the local housing market as weathering the storm of the pandemic. Unfortunately, sales tax revenue is down 14% year over year in May. And the Federal Reserve has estimated the deficit in the next biennium to be a minimum of $5 billion. The two biggest budget items in the state of Texas are education and health and human services. So if there is a cut in the state budget, it would have to come from those two areas. The governor has mandated a reduction or a tightening of 5% in departmental budgets. That does not include funding for school districts. That will produce savings of about $600,000 to $1 million, which is somewhere around 12% of the minimum deficit. The state does have sufficient funds in the economic stimulus fund, or the rainy day fund, to make up for the shortfall in the next biennium. They are not out of money. Local community leaders have reported that the pandemic, and this goes back to the swoosh that Bob was talking about, they believe that 68% are anticipate, or 68% of local communities are anticipating difficult economic recoveries. And although overall the economy is expected to increase, the Federal Reserve estimates that nearly 40% of businesses will take between 7 and 12 months to return to pre-pandemic economic conditions, and another 35% will take over a year. So I don't know how fast the economy is going to come back. I'm sure it will vary from sector to sector, but the V shape is not in the Fed's forecast. To a large extent, full funding of schools is dependent on the recovery of the Texas economy. Texas has been resilient, but we've never been through a pandemic. As noted, oil and gas is down, oil and gas revenues are down between 8 and 30%, depending on the commodity. And as I noted, sales tax revenue is down 14%. Those are the two biggest drivers in revenue for the state. And at this point in time, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Like I said, Debbie's going to present market conditions, and at that point in time, we can answer any questions. Whether you want to do it now or then is fine with me.
Just one quick thing. This is Jim, just for the board to consider. These are options. Obviously, this is one of the more challenging times we've had because of the inability to know for certain how things will occur within our economy, and of course the impact at the legislative level here in a few months. However, the information that you see tonight is our only options. As I've talked to superintendents throughout the Region 11 area, particularly in northern Tarrant County, there's a range of 1 to 2%. I don't know of any that are going above 2, but it's a range between 1 and 2. That's what I hear. People are trying to respond to the normal economic conditions that occur that we have to address from year to year as the cost of living increases for individuals and insurance costs and et cetera. But also we're trying to be very cognizant of the fact of what could happen here in about 6 months. And so if the board would like to have additional conversations about this through a board workshop, or if you want to reach out to me or Jim or Rob, feel free to do so as well. But I just want to let y'all know that this is not something that has to be determined tonight. Obviously, it's a report only, and we expect that there'll be a lot of discussions before we bring it to you for action.
This is Tim Daughtry. I think we need to do as much as we can for the teachers. I think the 2% is probably a good number in my view, but I know we're looking at all the, everything seems, negative, but, I was listening to some economic people today, and they keep pointing to the stock market. Nobody, and I guess none of these reports have even said anything about it. The stock market is nearly at 27,000, just a little under as of today, with all of this bad stuff that's happened. And it appears to me that most economists think that the economy is still stronger than it's ever been, because those numbers are still so high. I mean, it was like 18,000 4 years ago. So it's only about 1,500 or so off of. So does that not play some significance when you start looking in the future as far as the stability of the economics that we're sitting in right now?
Are you asking me, Tim?
Yeah. Yes.
I've been reading a lot, and you're right. The stock market is probably the place where the economy has been the most baffling, in that it did take an original hit back in March and then has started to come back. One of the concerns that a lot of people have is going to be, or is, whether or not there could be a second spike in the COVID-19 infection rate, and what that might do to the market. And even as those fears in the market moves from day to day, today the market went up, I think, a little over 1%, but the Fed also stepped in and pumped a lot of money into the market to support it. So you've had a tremendous amount of federal intervention, both in the bond market, which has buoyed some of those, or I was going to say gains, but has limited some of the declines that have been there. I'm more concerned about the impact directly on Texas, and I can't find anything that it very well could be a V-shape or a U-shape recovery or a swoosh, but if it doesn't recover fairly quickly, it could be 4 to 6 years before we are operating at normal levels. And it's a bet, Tim. It's absolutely a bet. But what I can tell you is, if we bet on 2% as an ongoing commitment, and we're not right, we're going to have to cut positions. If we don't have that mandated commitment, you may be able to do something other than cut positions. So I'm trying to provide as much of a raise as we possibly can, but limit future considerations because we simply don't know what's coming down the pipe. That's how I came up with that. That's my theory on putting this together.
Jim, this is Steve Newcomb again. Your report also had it a part about increasing the health insurance, yes, for employees, and the Be Well partnership.
Yes.
Those are already built in. Well, one of them, I guess, maybe doesn't have a budget impact, but the other one, you've already built that into the budget.
Both of them are built into the budget.
Okay.
So how much is built into the budget for those?
Well, the $25, I believe, is about 300,000, and which, by the way, was I'm not going to say committed to, but the board did push forward last year when we went up $25. The Be Well is about 180,000. So between the two, $500,000.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, I know we've got another report between Dr. Dawkins that's going to cover some of the things Jim talked about. We can move on if without any other further questions. Anybody else have anything? All right. Thank you, Mr. Shealy. We'll move
No problem.
We'll move now to agenda item 2D1, the Educational Services Report. The 2020-2021 InterQuest Canine Detection Contract. Dr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. You will find this report starting on page 58. You may recall a year ago we chose to switch services due to InterQuest's increase in services that they provide. as well as the increase in number of dogs available to us, and the fact that they would be in our district with an increased number of minutes per visit. Of course, our canine services will go to all of our secondary campuses, where they focus on the high schools and the parking lots, inspecting vehicles, as well as lockers throughout all secondary campuses. The proposed price has not changed from last year to the coming year. It's $460 per visit. Of course, tonight we are only providing this as information. Next month we will come back with a plan to seek approval. Things have gone well. I am paying attention to the amount of false positives that do occur. And so I'm paying attention to that. The way they train their dogs, any dog trainer, the way they train them is to find a dog with an instinctive play drive, PLAY drive, a tennis ball, for example, and then to put that ball in a bucket with the drugs, the prescriptions, the alcohol items, and the dog believes the scent is then going to be related to that tennis ball. And so that's how they train them. And so at times we have seen over the fall semester some false positives. And so I want to have that discussion with them. But otherwise, we are getting the service that we did seek. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to entertain those. You'll see on page 59 is the actual example of the contract that we'll talk about in July.
Yeah, this is Paige Ring. I did have a question. So are the false positives unique to the way they train their dogs, or is this just something that happens? Because I don't remember ever hearing about false positives before.
And thank you for that question. And that is my concern, and that's what I'm going to look at and talk with them about. They do train on more items, and one of the things that was appealing was the training on gunpowder. What we found was, let's say someone went hunting on a weekend, they come to school on Monday, the residue scent is still in the vehicles, and there was a hit there. So yes, I think I will talk with them about that to see if we can have an improvement in that. We do not want to waste the administrative time trying to track that down when there's nothing there, or to pull a child or family into something that's not necessary.
All right, thank you, Dr. Baker, for that report. And that will come back as an action item next month.
Yes, it will.
All right, thank you. Next is agenda item 2E1, the Human Resources Report, Annual Compensation Study. Dr. Dawkins.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have for you in front of you, and it starts on page 60, the Annual Compensation Study. And so I just wanted to point out that we look not only internally but externally for competitiveness to look at an objective assessment of current pay positions on the teacher matrix with those of our neighbors and comparison districts. In our proposal, what you'll see is we've looked at districts from Region 11 with an enrollment of 10,000 or more. And so I'd like to draw your attention, if you would, to page 62. So those are the districts in Region 11 that have enrollment of 10,000 or more. So those are our neighbors and our competitors, as you can see. The following page, page 63, if you'll look, which is our trend line from 2009 to 2019, so for the past 10 years, and you can see definitely an increase, and so that's really helped our marketability with our district. On page 64, what it does is a breakdown at 5-year increments to see where we compete in the market. And so you can see that we have, for instance, like in year 0, you see several districts hovering, but you also see in these rankings that there's not as much variance, even though it might be, okay, we're in place 5 in year 0 and 9. If you look at the district slightly above us, say in year 5, it's just a few $100s. And so there's just a nominal difference sometimes in our neighbors, but it does affect our rankings, but the difference is somewhat nominal. And also I would want to commend Mr. Shealy for the increase in the insurance. And so that's not reflective in this, although that does increase the annual salary. So it's less out of pocket. And so you can look at the following page, page 65. It's a nice snapshot from where we ranked. It's kind of a 5-year glance overall at where we ranked, and you can see that we're making improvements every year in that, and that's been the commitment of the board. The last page, page 66, what this shows is what the salaries would look like with the 1% increase, the general pay increase that Mr. Shealy spoke about. So actually that sets on a teacher matrix, this would be what our teachers would make with a 1%. So our 0-year teachers at step 1 this past year made $55,000. So then their actual salary would be $55,550. And so if we were making adjustments, if we made any adjustments to step 0, we would need to take that into account. Otherwise, it's $55,045, which is a similar formula to other districts. However, we know that many times they move that 0-year step pretty tight with the 1-year step, and we could do the same thing. We could set that definitely set that higher. That's a consideration of the board. So I'd like to offer any questions on the compensation study.
This is Tim Daughtry again.
Yes,
I was noticing back when we actually dropped teacher salaries back in 2010 and 11 and 11 and 12, that we did reduce the teacher salary because of the budget restraints from the state and all that stuff. So I guess I'm a little confused on why why 2% just straight raise for a teacher. Are we not allowed to reduce their salaries now, but we were back then? If you, instead of doing the 1% salary, 1% bonus, or whatever you wanted to call it. So I'm confused in that area on why we could do it back then, but we, if need be, that we can't do it now.
Tim, this is Jim Shealy.
okay.
We did not reduce salaries. What we did was we slid the steps. Everybody made the same amount of money in in year 2 as they did in year 1. There was never a reduction in salary.
Correct.
So we could do the same thing again.
Yes, you can move people up the step without an increase. You could do that. But we would need to, but then that would not be a GPI. What? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this is Paige. To clarify, then that what we did before was hold their, so that when somebody got a check, they got the same amount on their check 2 years in a row.
Yes. And so what that did, what you're seeing on page 63 is the 0-year teacher made the drop, new to the district, not current staff. That's a 0-year starting salary.
So, and one other concern that I have, I would hate to see our district fall out of the top 10,
right?
Just for recruiting purposes and stuff. And if we, I mean, you can look how close everything is. I think if we don't do the 2%, and any districts that do the 2%, we're going to fall out of the top 10 on several of the the 5, 10, 15, 20-year areas, in my opinion. I think we would have to give 2% just to stay competitive, just to stay where we are in those areas, which we're inching pretty. I mean, we're barely in the top 10. I mean, we're not firmly in there, I wouldn't say. So anyway, I would be concerned about that. Unless we absolutely, there's just absolutely no way that we can't afford to do that. But according to what it looks like, it was already 2% was already built into the budget and stuff. I mean, it appears to me that unless I'm reading it wrong, that it would be okay to do that. But anyway, that's just the way I see it.
Any other questions for Dr. Dawkins?
Just one other.
Sure.
On the page ring again, on page 65 in the book, 4 of the presentation, 65 in the board book. On those rankings, what causes us to jump around so much, where we've gone from 12, 7, 8, 10, and the 10 years and 15? Is it just the mix of people in there? So we just have a younger group of kids or teachers that fall in the 10-year category this year than maybe we did the previous year? It doesn't make sense if we're following the industry and everybody's taking 2%, we take a 2%. So it's just mix of the teachers, and we just happen to have a younger group maybe this year in the 10-year category on average. Is that what causes that?
It has to do with what our salary was at that step, at 0 year, 5, 10, 15, at that time that year. So we ranked 12th in 14, 15 with our comparison group, which is the same group that we have in the report. We were 12th for 0 year teacher salary, 5 year 12th, like that. So we've moved up. If you look at 1920, we're now ranked 5 in 0 year, which shows that commitment to the board even a couple of years ago. I mean, really 18, 19 is when we really made our gains with our teachers' salary steps.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to get at. So in year 0, it looks like we've done a really good job of taking and moving our pay structure such that we're improving the overall structure. If you look at the 10-year column, it doesn't look like that, but that's just because of the mix of people that fall in there, right? Like, so it's maybe comparing apples to oranges, because they'd probably make a very similar amount if they went to apply to one of these other school districts based on their own individual tenure, right?
Actually, we're not as competitive with 5 and 10 as we are in other areas. If you go back to 64, page 64, we are lagging a little in that area. But if you look,
yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Is it mixed, or is it truly that we're not as competitive in those years? Because it doesn't make sense to me with the salary actions that we've taken that in year 5, we could go 12, 11, 10, 9, we keep getting better every single year. But in year 10, where we took the same type and structure of salary action, we can go from 12 to 7 to 8 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it has to be mixed, but I guess I'm looking for confirmation on that. The mix of the teachers that are in there that we're benchmarking.
Yeah. It's not the mix of the teachers. And so if we wanted to focus our efforts on 5 and 10, then what we would do is whatever recommendation for the board for compensation, that would allow the finance department and myself to maybe adjust the salaries for 5 and 10-year teachers, adjust that step a little bit, which for those groups, which means that they might end up with a little bit more than 2%. To get them competitive in the market.
Paige, this is Marilyn Tolbert, and I think what it looks like, if I'm looking at the numbers right, it looks like that some of the ones that moved us up, we were okay. We went from 12 to 7 to 7, then we dropped to 8 to 8 and 10. It looks like some of our competing districts must have had a little bit of a bigger salary increase because of the difference in numbers.
In those years specifically.
In those years of service, yes. In those years of service.
I mean, in the case of 5 years, it's
It's,
If we wanted to be in 7, you know, there would have been another $300, you know.
right.
I mean,
It's a nominal amount to move up. It's also, we would need to look at the number of teachers that are at that.
right.
So, but you can see how tight it is. Like you said, it can even be $300.
Yeah.
Moves you up 2 or 3 spots as far as competitiveness.
Well,
Yeah.
just an example, Debbie, is in a couple of these areas where I know what the other school districts are planning on doing or already have done. Doing nothing in our case would drop us down. Even making a 2% increase in a couple of these areas, we may stay actually at the same number we are now, maybe
Correct.
+1. In the year 0, advancing and doing a 2%, we would gain maybe a spot. If we didn't
Right.
do anything, we would lose probably several spots, going back to what Mr. Daughtry said earlier. So it is something that we know there's a lot of moving parts in this, and that's why we're trying to bring this to you now. It's just a report so that you can be thinking about this and giving us your thoughts. It's very interesting on the bonus. Some districts, it's something they really want to do. It's either one of 2 camps: do not want to do it at all, and then some love the idea. So there's not a wrong answer here. It's just what's best for EMS. So
Right.
if it's not something we want to do in our district, then that's perfectly fine. But we did want to bring it to you because some of our neighboring districts are utilizing that as a way to compensate without committing into the next year.
If you do it, part of it as a bonus or all of it as a bonus, does that still count for their teacher's retirement money?
It does. It does count into
Yes.
teacher retirement, but what it does not do is necessarily change some of the public postings of salary comparisons, and I want to be transparent there. So if we did a 1 and 1, they would both go into the teacher retirement system, but most likely only 1% would be calculated, for example, in the UEA salary comparison.
Yes.
So that from a market perspective, it really doesn't help you there, because you don't get credit at the market level unless people do the calculations on their own, but which my experience is very rare. People don't look at those things.
So that does affect retention. So it would have the positive impact on retention of our current employees.
Is this
Can you
report
clarify
from UAW, or is this our?
Oh, UEA, this is our
Okay.
study. Now we're using the numbers that you have here are what's reported by the districts through TASB. UEA has access to that same information.
And Mr. President, one reason why these specific districts are listed, these are the ones that we're most likely to compete with in terms of exchanging employees.
Right.
And so that's why we chose them. We didn't choose others that we don't have that same challenge.
This is Paige again. I would be curious, I know you've been doing benchmarking. I would be curious on that benchmarking and what salary actions we think the different districts are taking by district. It could just be on a Friday update or something.
Okay, so.
But it makes more of a difference to me if, the number 1 ranked school is going to take a flat 2% in their salary, because that makes the scale look that much higher, right? As we're having people.
Right. I can do that. And send that to you all.
We can put it together. Some of these are projections because
Right.
they haven't taken actions either.
Right.
And so we'll give you information, but if that's something you're looking at, I personally, what I would do if I'm in your shoes is I would just take every one of those and advance them by 1 and 2%, because I've only seen one that's at 3%, and it's not one that we compete a lot with.
Right.
And so I would look at it that way, and then we'll get you those as we hear. Some of them are not really publicizing them yet. They're just kind of talking about it, kind of like we're doing right now. So if they ask me tomorrow what we're looking at, I would say, well, we're looking between 1 and 2%. And that's what a lot of them are saying right now.
And if you'll notice, Paige, when you look at the numbers, the The 0 to 5 years, for example, HEB, it goes up $3,000, and ours only goes up $1,200. So that may be more of a question or a thing to look at as to why the differences are different. There, and you can look across and compare them all, but that's why we dropped from 5 to 9. That ain't anything to do with our percentage rating. It has to do with the amount of increase we give a 5-year teacher versus a 0-year teacher.
When I understand from year to year, I was more concerned about how we can change our rankings so vastly different going up and down when we're taking the same type of directional action each year. So
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Well, you know, on the 30-year, if you remember a few years back, we wanted to get those teachers that have been with us a long time a little more compensation because we were way down on that list, and we
Right.
focused on that, and that's why I'm sure it rose up to 4. So
Right. We did focus on, yes, you're 30 and above.
and we jumped up to 2nd, I noticed, and then but each of them has a different price tag. I understand that based on the number of teachers that are in that range. All right. I would like to get through the next
Okay.
couple of reports before a break if we can. So,
We can.
all right,
I'm on. I have the next one.
go right ahead.
All righty. So this is additional staffing 4, as you can see. So we've continued to identify positions for consideration for the upcoming school year. So I want to draw your attention to page 68 and talk through some of those positions with you. So the first one are the assistant trainers. And that's the, again, just the level of support that they would provide. And I wanted to point out that the salary that we have for that includes the stipend. And so we've used the teacher salary that we use as kind of an average salary of $65,000. The stipend is just under $11,000. And so for readability purposes, I considered it at $11,000. And so it would be a $76,000 position for 3 of those. We also have Title I instructional coaches. So we have available, actually in the Title II instructional coach, federal funds or Title I funds to cover all of the costs of those and to provide additional support for our campuses. As you can see, with the addition of social workers, we have available compensatory education funds to cover the full cost of those. I did want to show you that you'll see a PE aide, and we have, I'm adding 2 positions this next year for Lake Point, one for Lake Point and one for Greenfield. As Mr. Templeton showed, projections for Lake Point would be 846 students. And so just for safety purposes, Greenfield will be at 744 projected. We really need another set of hands in there for the numbers, especially in PE. At General Office Aide, Lake Point, we'd like to add General Office Aide again for the numbers of not only students, but the numbers of teachers that increase and then parents, with the thought that the PE aide hired for Lake Point and the General Office Aide for Lake Point could be 2 positions that move over to Lake Country Elementary School in the 2021-22 school year. So when that campus splits, that would be ideal to be able to slide those people to serve that campus. We also have, as you can see, Secretary Safety and Security. At this time, Dr. Baker is using either, doing a lot of the administrative duties himself or using shared administrative assistants for that. We are considering adding some additional campus security specialists and then also a lead security specialist to support that work. I wanted to show you on the special education teacher, VI, That is a teacher of the visually impaired students, and so that is a real specific position. We have had an increase in the number of students that would need a teacher, the visually impaired, to be able to, what they do is translate that to Braille. So we've had an increase in that. That's a definite need, and those are some students that will be new to our district that have enrolled. And then on the last two positions, where it's special ed teacher district-wide and an assistant, those are our growth in our adult education program where we serve students over 18. And that program has almost doubled in the last 3 years. And so that speaks to Dr. Hughes and the level of services that she is providing. And so we want to continue to provide those services to our students. I've shown down, we talked about the breakdown in local funds and special education funds. And so I've shown that at the bottom to provide some clarification for that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Dawkins. I know that this is coming back as an action item in the July meeting.
It is.
I know you'd like to post them without objection, so anybody have any questions on this report? All right. Hearing none, we'll move to, thank you, Dr. Dawkins.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll move to agenda item 2E3, the Human Resources and Student Services Report, which includes the 2020-2021 JJAEP Memorandum of Understanding. Ms. Turntine.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good evening, President Newcomb, Dr. Chadwell, and the distinguished members of the Board of Trustees. I would like to direct your attention to begin on page 69 of your board report. In this, pursuant to Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code that relates to Title V offenses, our district is one of 18 districts in Tarrant County that must enter into an MOU with the Juvenile Justice Alternative Program. Normally in this situation, our current MOU will expire on the 31st. There are no changes in the cost to our discretionary costs, that they will remain at $129. However, to direct your attention to section 15 of the MOU, they will require that we, as a district, make sure that a member from JJAEP is invited and also provided notice for students that receive special education services and students with the IEP to attend those ARDs. That is the only major change to this MOU. If you look at the information that I have presented to you, last year, where this current school year, we only had 2 discretionary placements, and those had to deal also with Title V. The year before that, we had 3. Prior to that, we had 1, and probably the largest number that this district has sent as far as discretionary was in 2015 and 2016. So again, and then also too, in your report, I have proposed projections, and these are just based on what we've been looking at, and we've toggled between a projection of total of 6 to 8, and so this year we're projecting 6. Are there any questions that you may have for me?
I don't hear any, so thank you very much for the report. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our last report is agenda item 2F, the MSISD Athletic Department Annual Report. Mr. Brent Barker.
Yes, sir. Dr. Chadwell, the board. I hope you guys can hear me okay.
We can hear you fine.
Perfect. Information about the athletic report would be found on your pages 78 through 112, and I'll quickly go through them and highlight some of the positive things that happened during half of a school year that we were able to participate in athletics. You know, the year started out with cross country, and Boswell had 2 runners that qualified for the state track or state cross country meet. And of course, one of them was Andrea Acuna, coach's daughter, who had gone to the state meet the previous 3 years, so she went all 4 years. Chisholm Trail had a great team tennis season in the fall. They won 13 of 17 matches and unfortunately finished fourth in a very tough district and had to face Colleyville. But they had a great season. And of course, Saginaw Rough Riders finished the football season and had a great football season at 7-3 and played Birdville at Birdville in a really close first round of the playoffs and got beat, but they had a tremendous season, and congratulations to Coach Johnson and his staff and all of his players. Boswell Volleyball had another great season with 33 wins and ended up the year in a regional tournament. Got beat by Amarillo in Lubbock. Our girls basketball programs all did really well. All three of them had a chance to go to the playoffs, and Boswell won another district championship. Saginaw was third, and Chisholm Trail tied for fourth with three other teams and got beat in a play-in game. But again, it was a good girls basketball year. As we go into our winter months, we had 8 wrestlers qualify for the state tournament. And just right before COVID-19 hit, I was in Austin watching Hunter Boniface participate in the swimming state championship for Boswell, and he got second place and got a nice medal, and also got, I think, 5th or 6th in the other race that he participated in. And of course, Boswell swim team set a ton of records throughout the year. And then what's not in your packet, and unfortunately, right literally as COVID hit, Chisholm Trail High School girls soccer were breaking lots of records. They won 13 wins and were currently in 3rd place with 1 game to play when their season came to an end, as well as the Chisholm Trail boys soccer program was 7-3 in district and ended up in 4th place with 1 game to play. And so both of those would have made the playoffs for the first time ever in school history. If you go to page 105, our middle school programs had another successful year. We had 3 football teams that going into the last week of the season, each had just 1 loss. And so we had one that defeated another one of those teams. And so they were, 3 teams were outstanding, as well as in 8th grade, we had a great volleyball program there at Wayside that dominated all levels and all teams, as well as had 2 outstanding 8th grade girls basketball teams. If you go to page 106, looking into the future, the new districts came out. And of course, Boswell and Chisholm in football are in District 3 6A, and we're excited about the opportunity to move up to the 6A classification and felt like we got a good district that we could participate in and compete in. Saginaw remained in 5A, and they're in District 3 5A, and that was all listed there for you. All the other sports that Saginaw will participate in volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, Steve Griffin and I were able to go down to Austin and appeal that district that they were currently or previously in, and was able to get them into the Fort Worth district, which is District 7 5A. If you do notice that the wrestling districts are always a little different, and so we're in District 2 6A with Boswell and Chisholm, which would really participate in the Keller district for the most part, and then Saginaw will kind of remain in the current district that we were in this year. And of course, swimming is always a little different, and so we'll be again in District 3 6A in swimming, which is again the Keller schools, and then Saginaw will remain kind of in the current district with 6 5A. On page 110, we also are involved in a new middle school district that Steve Griffin will oversee. I know that we had previously played in the district with Keller schools as well as Northwest schools. Keller schools decided to go back with the district they were previously in, which was South Lake and Coppell, and then they invited Northwest to join them. And so Becky Spurlock, Steve, and several other ADs got together and kind of formed a 14-team district that covers quite a large range, but we're excited about it because obviously we have 6 teams in that district, and so we kind of are able to play who we want to, and it won't include all the traveling that it may look like throughout those 14 schools, but it is, we are excited about the new district. And then 2 new projects basically that we are looking at doing this coming year, and we did it when I first became the athletic director here. Is we worked with the NFHS to stream or live stream our athletic events. As a matter of fact, our board president, Mr. Newcomb, was one of our color commentators in basketball, and we may get him to do it again and get some help. Maybe Coach Doctor will be doing something like that as well. But we want to try to video and live stream and televise all of our athletic events, football, basketball, We were involved today in a AD's conference throughout the Region 3 area. And, it was talked about, what our stands will look like with COVID-19 and what our games will look like in the fall and even moving into the winter months. And so, if we have a limited amount or the social distancing, only a certain amount of spectators that are allowed in our venues, then we'd like to be able to live stream so that people could actually watch them from home. And then the other thing we want to try to get involved in is a thing that's called a digital board or touch screen that I've seen at several different districts as we go from Region 3 meeting to Region 3 meeting. And we'd like to possibly put our Hall of Fame on this touchscreen board, as well as maybe the history of Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. And we may start out by doing just the athletic portion first. That would have all of our records going way back to when Boswell was started, as well as Chisholm and Saginaw, which will be a little easier. But it should have all the records and not only team records but individual records, as well as pictures, videos that we've added recently. And so a person could go in there and touch screen and know everything you want to know about all 3 high schools. And eventually, hopefully doing that with our Hall of Fame, getting all of our Hall of Fame members on this screen, along with bands and fine arts and things like that as we get into it a little bit more. So that's another thing we've been looking at doing, and putting one in each high school, but also having one in our administration building. And so that's kind of a quick overview of our athletic year. And so are there any questions or comments?
I don't hear you, Brent.
Did I lose you during that? I just said.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I did. I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you fine. We appreciate your report. Looking forward to those changes. And I know you have some challenges in front of you to meet the opening of the 2021 athletic year as well as the school year. So we'll look forward to reports on how you can address those challenges coming up in the future.
Sure. And we just also, last Monday, I know y'all are aware, but we opened up for our kids to come back on the campuses and begin our strength and conditioning and sport specific skills. And it went really, really well to be, in a tough situation. And our coaches did a good job of keeping kids safe. And we had really good numbers that appeared on all of our campuses. And of course, Boswell's having to use Marine Creek as well as Wayside. So we're off to a good start for the summer.
All right. Thank you, Brent. That does conclude the report section. Before we move into the action items, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we'll resume at 6:52. All right, we're returning back from our break, and we did finish all the reports, and we'll start with the action items. So in order to provide a clear method to hear each trustee's vote, the following steps will be taken. It's similar to the way we've done it the last few months. When making a motion or second, please include your name in the motion. For example, this is Steve Newcomb. I recommend approval of the item. For the vote, I will provide a roll call by trustee place. When voting, signify by yay or opposed. I'll respond to each vote, repeating your vote for clarification. For example, thank you, Dr. Tolbert. I recorded your vote in favor of item 3A. At the end of voting, I'll report the vote count for confirmation, whether the item carries or does not. Our first action item is action item 3A. It's to conduct a federal programs public meeting. We're going to call on Dr. Mary Jones after I open it. At this time, on behalf of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open hearing on the status of the federal programs currently serving the needs of students in the district in accordance with state and federal laws regarding rules for school districts on reporting requirements. Dr. Jones, at this time, if you'll give the report.
Okay, good evening, President Newcomb, board members, and Dr. Chadwell. I just want to provide you information on our federal programs entitlement for the 2020-2021 school year. These programs provide supplemental funding for our district and campuses. For Title I, the schools we will be serving for next year will be the same 12 elementary schools we are serving this school year. The goal of Title I is to improve student performance. Our Title I Part A entitlement for next year is $1,709,586, which is an increase of $27,994. And this is located, the report is on page 113 in your board manual or book. Title II, the funds are used to improve student achievement. We provide scientifically based staff development for our at the district level and also for the campuses. And once again, we are required to show improvement in the academic areas. And our entitlement for Title II for this next school year is $340,794, which is an increase of $18,493 from last year. Title III Part A, which is for our English learners, to improve English proficiency and academic performance of our LEP students as well as the immigrant students. Our entitlement for next year is $234,374,000, which is an increase of $17,369 from this past school year. Title IV for 2021 is the entitlement in it is $127,857, which is an increase of $3,323 from last year. These supplemental funds are used to provide well-rounded educational opportunities for our student, improve student outcomes by maintaining safe and healthy students and improving the use of technology to advance the student academic achievement. Perkins, which used to fall under Title I, now is considered Perkins Title V. It's for strengthening career and technical education for the 21st Century Act, and it provides funding for career and technical education. And our entitlement for 2021 is $113,931, which is a decrease of $13,174 for next school year. And then our last area of federal funding is Idea B, which provides funding for special education and related services to students with disability. Our funding for this next school year is $2,955,918, which is an increase of $219,712. And then for the Idea preschool entitlement for next year, it's $18,372, which is an increase of $4,200 from last year. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Jones, for that
You're welcome.
report. We appreciate it. Individuals desiring to address the board regarding the federal programs report were to submit a completed public comment request form by 4:45 p.m. today. The form is located on the EMS ISD website. Dr. Chapel, are there any public comments received?
No, sir, there were not.
There are no requests for public comment. Therefore, we're going to move forward with our posted agenda. At this time, the public hearing on the federal program status for the district is closed. Our next agenda item is 3B, is to act on recommendations of the 2019-2020 Board Name Committee. This committee was composed of myself, Tim Daughtry, and Paige Ring. We had met several times, considered input from people in the district and from others for naming facilities. And we do have discussed some recommendations we'd like to bring before the board. At this time, I'm going to ask Paige Ring.
Yes, we did have, this is Paige Ring, and we did have a couple motions we wanted to bring forward for consideration tonight. And the first one is we would like to name the Performing Arts Center at Chisholm Trail High School the Jared Hardy Performing Arts Center. So I make that motion.
I make a motion to approve that recommendation as presented. This is Tim Daughtry.
Second, this is Marilyn Tolbert.
Thank you. We actually had a motion by Paige Ring to approve the naming the Chisholm Trail Performing Arts Center, the Jared Hardy Performing Arts Center, and a second by Tim Daughtry. Marilyn also chimed in her support. Are there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll take the roll call vote. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay on item 3B. Paige Ring.
Yay.
Thank you, Paige Ring, for your vote of yay on item 3B. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay on item 3B. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William Bowes, for your vote of yay on item 3B. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay on item 3B. I, Steve Newcomb, also vote yay on item 3B. The motion carries 6-0.
And I had a second motion I would like to make as well, and this is the naming of the Wayside Middle School Band Hall, and we would like to name that the Terry Parish Band Hall at Wayside Middle School. So I make that motion.
This is Tim Daughtry, second.
We have a motion by Paige Ring and a second by Tim Daughtry to name the band hall at Wayside the Terry Parish Band Hall. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay on item 3B regarding Mr. Parrish. Paige Ring.
Yay.
Thank you, Paige Ring, for your vote of yay on item 3B regarding Mr. Parrish. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay on item 3B regarding Mr. Parrish. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William Bowes, for your vote of yay regarding item 3B and Terry Parrish. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay on item 3B regarding Mr. Parrish. I, Steve Newcomb, also vote yay on item 3B regarding Mr. Parrish. The motion carries 6-0.
Mr. President, just a couple of items here. For those that are listening in, if you haven't gone to Twitter or Facebook or anything yet, we do ask you to hold, if you don't mind. Neither of these individuals know that this was possible tonight. We'd like the opportunity to reach out to them first, of course. Hopefully that will be possible, and we will do so right after the conclusion of the meeting. The other item is that for the board members, we are going to wait to set those dates, especially with the consideration of COVID-19 and not knowing exactly what our abilities will be going into the fall fall. We will plan to set one up early in fall and one late in fall, early winter. But those dates will be worked out with the individuals that are the facilities are being named after.
Thank you, Dr. Chabel. And the naming committee is actually meeting tomorrow to consider some of these things. So if you have any input on those, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Chabel or myself or any member of the committee, which is Paige Ring and Tim Daughtry. All right, the next item is agenda item 3C to award the contract for security upgrades at multiple campuses and the gym night maintenance facility additions and renovations. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. Good evening, everyone. This item is, as Mr. Newcomb said, for the project of the security upgrades and the maintenance facility expansion. This project was performed using the construction manager at risk procurement method. And we had 3 qualified responses that were received from Buford Thompson, Pogue Construction, and Reeder Construction. We had a review panel that consisted of 4 district employees and 4 representatives from VOK Architects. And the review panel graded and ranked each contractor, and that tabulation or that ranking is provided for your review on page 119. From the ranking, the panel determined that Pogue Construction was the highest ranking firm. And so that would be our recommendation tonight. And what we're doing is recommending the construction manager at risk. And if awarded, then that contractor would then start working on the guaranteed maximum price that we would bring back to you for approval at a subsequent meeting. And I'll answer any questions if you have any.
This is Tim Daughtry. I'd like to make a motion to enter into contract negotiations for the security upgrades at multiple campuses and gym night maintenance facility additions and renovations project with the highest ranking contractor, Pogue Construction. In the event the district is unsuccessful in negotiating the contract with Pogue Construction, the board authorizes the administration to cease negotiations and move to the next highest ranking contractor or contractors until the contract can be successfully negotiated.
It's Marilyn Tolbert, second.
All right, we have a motion by Tim Daughtry and a second by Marilyn Tolbert to approve item 3C. The motion as Mr. Daughtry read it. We'll now vote on the motion. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay on item 3C. Paige Ring.
Yay.
Thank you, Paige Ring, for your vote of yay on item 3C. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay on item 3C. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William Bowes, for your vote of yay on item 3C. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay on item 3C. I also vote Steve Newcomb yay on item 3C. The motion carries 6-0. The next agenda item is 3D. It's also Mr. Jones, and it's to approve the interim guaranteed maximum price, or GMP, for phase 4 of the Boswell Athletic additions and renovations.
Thank you again, Mr. Newcomb. We will be looking at pages 120 through 139. There's a detailed description of interim GMP for phase 4. As you can see in the summary section, there's a significant amount of work that is included in package 4, as also Mr. Welch went over in his operations report. Also in the last section on page 121, I've just outlined for you each phase, the GMP for each phase as we've gone through since we've approved those or presented those for your approval as we went along. So phase 4 GMP is $35,570,529. This is the final phase of the project, so If this is approved, then the final GMP, if you add all those up together, it has a final GMP total of $48,855,084. And the recommendation is to approve the interim GMP so that the project can finish. And so I will answer any questions at this time.
This is Tim Daughtry, and I make a motion to approve the interim guaranteed maximum price for Phase 4 of the Boswell Athletic Additions and Renovations project in the amount of $35,570,529 for a total project cost of $48,855,084 as presented.
Marilyn Tolbert, second.
We have a motion by Tim Daughtry and a second by Dr. Marilyn Tolbert to approve the item as presented. Item 3D. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay on item 3D. Paige Ring.
Yay.
Thank you, Paige Ring, for your vote of yay on item 3D. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay on item 3D. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William, for your vote of yay on item 3D. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay on item 3D. I, Steve Newcomb, also vote yay on item 3D. Motion carries 6-0. That concludes our action items. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for those reports and action items. You bet. At this time, we'll review the routine monthly reports. Are there any questions from trustee on any of our routine monthly reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to review the 2020 board planning calendar. Dr. Chadwell.
Yes, this is on page 189 of your packet. You'll notice reports. We have the 5-year projection report, the consideration of TAD information, and the projection of property tax receipts. We'll discuss update on bond capacity and insurance recommendations and review the budget to be presented for adoption. We'll also have construction updates and the annual communications update. Under action items, you have the opportunity to elect designated delegate and alternative to the 2020 TASB Delegate Assembly. So start thinking about who you want to recommend for those positions. We'll also set a special meeting for the superintendent appraisal and contract, which is usually in late November. We'll also set the public meeting to discuss the 2021 budget and proposed tax rate and consider approving for the 2021 compensation plan. If you have any questions over these items or anything that you would like to have on the agenda, just feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Thank you.
Dr. Chadwell, there were some reports that were coming back, and maybe that you listed them all, but whatever was presented as a report will be coming back as an action item. Okay.
Yes, sir. I didn't list the consent agenda items. We do have the approval of the InterQuest Canine Detection Contract, the approval of the 2021 JJAP MOU, and the staffing report that you saw tonight. The one item you haven't seen because it's an annual report is the Tarrant County Livestock Estray sublease agreement.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I apologize, Mr. President. Before you do so, there is one correction underneath the report I just gave you. It showed that the board operating procedures would be coming this next month. They actually, there was a little bit of a delay, and so it showed that on that report. However, we did make it into the consent agenda, and I just wanted to bring the board's attention to that. That is in this month's agenda, our consent agenda, and also there were a few slight modifications. I did review those with Mr. Newcomb. And so if you have any questions on those, I'd be happy to discuss them, but you would need to pull it from the consent agenda to do so.
All right, thank you for that reminder, Dr. Chadwell. It is in the consent agenda, which is included with several other items. So I will intend a motion to approve the consent agenda or pull any items that the board wishes to pull from the consent agenda.
This is Tim Daughtry. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Paige Ring, second.
All right, I have a motion by Tim Daughtry and a second by Paige Ring to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll now take the roll call vote. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay on the consent agenda. Paige Ring.
Yay.
Thank you, Paige Ring, for your vote of yay on the consent agenda. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay on the consent agenda. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William Bowes, for your vote of yay on the consent agenda. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay on the consent agenda. I, Steve Newcomb, also vote yay on the consent agenda. Motion carries 6-0. The next item is some announcements, first by the board president, myself, and then by the superintendent. I just want to express the board's appreciation, Dr. Chabel, for all the work that your leadership team has done and guiding us through these issues. And we appreciate your leadership so much and what you've been able to accomplish and keep our district moving forward. I know we have a lot of challenges ahead of us to decide how we reopen or if we reopen and how that all goes about. But we know that you'll be leading us in the way that's best for our students, and we appreciate what you and your leadership team have done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now the superintendent's announcements. Dr. Chabel.
Yes, sir. First thing, just to bring everyone, the community's attention to something that hasn't been reported yet. The board and the district were successful this last week in reissuing and refinancing debt that created a savings of $16,058,547. This was just a really incredible opportunity this last year to refinance some debt and to bring those savings to taxpayers. It also allowed us to reaffirm our bond ratings at a AA-, and also an underlying in one of our fields of AA2, and also an underlying from the Permanent School Fund of a AAA. As we talked to the underwriters and talked to the various individuals that we were doing our rating calls with, Moody's and Fitch, it was very affirming for the district's leadership for many, many years to manage district's finances, especially during challenging times. So it was an easy calls to make because of the conditions that we have in the district. So just really thankful for that and our ability to manage our long-range debt for debt service. The other, and Mr. Newcomb alluded to that, is our planning for 2021. We essentially have three options. Attend traditionally, as we have in years past. We attend through some type of distance learning, such as we've done in the last several weeks, or some type of hybrid model. A number of districts are looking at different options. We're being very careful not to overextend ourselves in one direction without having all the information necessary from which to make that decision. Our goal in the end, and I believe our goal from everyone that I've talked to in our community, has been, if at all possible, to come back in a traditional manner. People want to come back to school. Obviously, student safety is paramount. We are making sure that we're being very careful in how to handle that. In fact, we're getting an experience there with the athletics program, as Mr. Barker talked about this last week, and making sure ensuring proper health protocols. We do have groups that are working on this. We've been very careful about not putting information out there that is not verified and that does not, and one of the main areas is to be able to have the ADA calculation from the TEA from which to create this system. And so for those of you that are not familiar with that, not board members, but people listening in, we receive funding per student per day. In the current system, there is no ability to work in any kind of virtual format or any type of flexible format and still receive funding for our students. And so that's really, really important. And it has been announced by the commissioner this last week that tomorrow that we'll have more information on that ADA calculation. And we're looking forward to have that information so it'll allow us to firm up some of the things that we're looking at and planning for this next year. As Mr. Newcomb mentioned, paramount is our student what's best for students. That comes from safety and academic performance. We want to do everything we possibly can do to support our kids. And we know that this affects all of our community. In fact, it affects each and every family member. So we want to be very careful of how we move forward with this. The other is I believe we've been observing and responding to the calls in our country, throughout our country, for ending racism in our country. And our hearts have gone out to those impacted by racism as well as discrimination in any form. The Eagle Mountain Saginaw community has prided itself on support for one another, support of every child, every classroom, every teacher, every school, and support of every community within the 73 square miles. And as a fast growth school district, we've been very fortunate to have maintained what people will describe as a small town feel. People will move from areas all over the state and the country, and they'll talk very quickly about how it feels to live here. And they'll talk about the acts of kindness that are shown, and what ultimately, as we decide in our school district to have equitability as an obsession, to make sure that we have equity in each classroom. So when we add technology devices, we don't add them in some classrooms, we add them to all. As we look at kids, we look at each and every child, and even in our mission, we don't talk about students in the plural, we talk about individual students. So diversity in our school and our community is our strength. And we care for each child, and we believe in each child's ability and also our responsibility to achieve at high levels. And as we've received input from our community throughout, especially this last few weeks, we're also considering what additional steps we need to take to ensure, as our beliefs state, to have a barrier-free education for every child, barrier-free. Every child having access and the opportunities and quality instruction, and again, an obsession to make sure every child is supported and have their needs met. And this remains a critical part of our work to fulfill our vision, as we see in our mission of instilling a passion for a lifetime of continuous achievement in every student. Again, student, each child, and this work will never cease. And so I wanted to make those comments tonight because we know it's a very difficult time throughout our country, and we in our community, in our schools, our teachers, our parents, many community members and volunteers, we love our kids and we care for our kids, and we'll continue to do so and support them. And we thank all that have come together to support the kids in the EMS community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Chadwell, for those comments, and the board sure echoes those, that we're fostering a culture of excellence in all students, and that's been the mission of this district from the start, and we want to make sure that that continues. It is currently 7:21 p.m. on Monday, June 15th, 2020. The board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Section 551.071, consultation with board's attorney. 551.072, purchase or deliberating a purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Section 551.074, purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, reassignment duties, or discipline of a public officer or employee. 551.075, purpose of deliberating regarding deployment or specific occasion for security, including the review of the district's emergency operating procedures. And 551.082, considering discipline of a public school child or complaint or charge against personnel. Other participants may remain on this phone line, and the board will return on this phone line immediately following the executive session. Board, let's try to reconvene in 5 minutes. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. The board is reconvening the public meeting on Monday, June 15th, 2020 at 7:43 p.m. I do have to take a roll call vote to assure we have a quorum as we reconvene. Dr. Marilyn Tolbert.
Present.
Tim Daughtry.
Present.
William Bowes.
Present.
Donna Webb.
Present.
I, Steve Newcomb, and also present. We have a little delay because Paige Ring was reaching out to Terry Parrish and I was reaching out to Jared Hardy just to let them know of the board actions tonight. Paige has not rejoined us, but I don't think she's going to mind if we go ahead and conclude the meeting. So with no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn. This is Donna Webb.
Second, Marilyn Tolbert.
I have a motion by Donna Webb and a second by Marilyn Tolbert to adjourn the meeting. We'll now take a roll call vote. Dr. Tolbert.
Yay.
Thank you, Dr. Tolbert, for your vote of yay to adjourn. Tim Daughtry.
Yay.
Thank you, Tim Daughtry, for your vote of yay to adjourn. William Bowes.
Yay.
Thank you, William Bowes, for your vote of yay to adjourn. Donna Webb.
Yay.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for your vote of yay to adjourn. I, Steve Newcomb, also vote yay to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned, carries 5-0.